Alright, so I'm going to be doing a review of Star Trek The Q Conflict. This was a comic sent to me by my good friend Chris. This was one of the second of the four books, Star Trek books he was going to be sending me as like a pseudo Christmas, a kind of Christmas present. Chris, man, thank you so much, and can't wait for the Indie Haul to come soon. Yeah, so what is Star Trek The Q Conflict? Star Trek The Q Conflict was basically a big anniversary, meant to be like a big anniversary book. It's written by Scott and David Tipton, who I talked about in the fanfiction idea of the AVP Star Trek crossover fanfiction idea. I talked about how I have a love-hate thing with them. We'll get to that in a minute. But basically what it was I guess you could say it's a in-universe crossover between TNG, TOS, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. Though it's those four, and if you're wondering why isn't Discovery here, at the time Discovery, when this was announced, Discovery was just being announced at the time, so we didn't get them in here. Although I'm sure if this had come out now, I'm sure Discovery probably would have either been the fifth member of this conflict, or probably replaced one of the other four. Not TOS or TNG. I'm talking if it was going to replace anyone, realistically, it'd have been DS9 or Voyager. Anyway, so what's this story about? Well, this is after the events. This is post Star Trek Nemesis, and essentially, the crew of Enterprise E, Picard and the others, are discovering that there are these series of supernovas going off across the galaxy, and it's random. But eventually they discover, Picard puts it together real fast. Ah, shit, Q, come on! So, Q reveals himself, and he also reveals what's going on. What's going on is that the Q Continuum is having a war outside of reality with other godlike beings throughout the Star Trek universe. So I'm talking Trelane, aka the Squire of Gothos. You have the Metrons. You have the Organians. They're all, and this is something that was never really brought up in Star Trek, right? We all thought hey, what are these godlike beings? There's so many godlike beings. How come they've never met or have them encounter one another? So this kind of answers that. So essentially, what happens is that Picard tries to intercede, and Q decides to make a game of it by bringing together all of the people from Voyager, Deep Space Nine, and the original Enterprise together to play in a series of games on behalf of these gods, and the winner gets to crown themselves King of the Multiverse or whatever. It's basically Star Trek Secret Wars. That's the best way I could describe it, is that it is Secret Wars, but instead of Marvel characters, it's Star Trek characters. Now, let's get to the Tiptons. The Tiptons are really good writers. I'm not going to deny that. And they've done two other crossovers for IDW, Star Trek crossovers that they did for IDW. The first one they did was Star Trek Doctor Who. And that one, while I do admit 8 issues is really long, and this could have been clipped down a bit. And then you had the Planet of the Apes crossover they did with Star Trek TOS, and that one made me go, this one felt really short. You could have done with one more issue. So it felt like there needed to be a Goldilocks space. And sure enough, this comic is that Goldilocks space, because here, while I will admit that the ending gets a little rushed, it does get a little rushed at the end in the last few pages, I feel like 6 issues was the perfect amount here. So what I like here is, like I said before, it is basically Secret Wars with Star Trek. And essentially what it is that the godlike beings of the universe, Q and the others, essentially draft their fantasy crew. So everyone is matched up with different captains. You have Spock with Picard, you have Worf with Kirk, you have Janeway with Riker, so on and so forth. It's all some some crew members stay with their own ship, others get jumbled around. It's kind of funny. It's I almost imagine it with the first pick of the God War draft, the Q Continuum selects Captain Picard, linebacker, OSU. Federation, Enterprise E. Just have it like Roger Goodell walk out there or some shit. Anyway. And yeah. So they basically go through these these major like contests against each other. And a lot of them this is like very much felt like an anniversary comic. Like this straight up felt like very much of an anniversary book where you have like the Planet Killer show up, the Planet Killer show up. You have them encountering the Borg. You have the Prophets. You have like every character you could imagine in like every show kind of showcased here. Unfortunately, one of the downsides to this is that it's focused more on the four captains, and even then, it really does feel like the Tiptons really wanted to just write Kirk, Sisko, and Janeway. Not Kirk, Picard, Sisko, and Janeway, and sometimes Kirk, because the TOS crew gets the least amount of screen time. And there are some like cool moments in here, like Worf encountering Kirk, like talking to Kirk. This is a Kirk before his son died, so we haven't got to that point yet. But it does kind of, like, I love that moment. There's also, like, another moment that involves Worf seeing Jax again, but he's talking to O'Brien, and I'm like, wait, O'Brien, you were at their wedding in DS9. You know the history between him and Jax, and I wish we got more of that between, you know, Dax and Worf, because the time, like, it's separated times and whatnot. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's just like little character moments are kind of swept under the rug for spectacle, which is fine. But it is Star Trek, and I wish we got more moments with that. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, at least we got these moments at all. And this doesn't feel like this should have dragged out for like 2 more issues. This feels like a solid 6-issue story. So, despite it being more focused on the captains, and it's clear that the Tiptons like writing Q a lot, this is still a solid book. I really enjoyed it. If you love Star Trek in any form, here you go. Here's your book. And it's really fun to see all these like these mixed crews together, like seeing Picard team up with Odo. That's a really, like, I was like, that's a cool combination right there. I really like Picard and Odo, you know, and having like Janeway with Riker. I'm like, that makes so much. That's so cool. But I will say Picard has the coolest crew. Just saying. Anyway, yeah, and again, if you do have some favorite characters, they do get. It's more of the captains, so that's another thing. And again, I think the crew that gets it the worst is the TOS crew, which kind of sucks because they're kind of the major they started all this, and this is meant to be an anniversary book. So I figured, yeah, why don't the hell they get more spotlight? But other than that, solid book. Thank you so much, Chris. I highly recommend this. Thank you again, Chris, for sending me this comic. And yeah, if you've read Star Trek The Q Conflict, let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of it. Other than that, hope y'all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.